Welcome everyone to our LinkedIn Live. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your moderator today. I'm going to introduce our topic. I'm going to introduce our guests, and then we're going to get going. So our topic today, our title is Leading with Legacy, Culture, Purpose, and Community. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things. I think in our prep calls around this, we identified a couple kind of interesting aspects that we've all kind of experienced and worked with clients around in terms of leadership, in terms of purpose and really kind of building community, but also really kind of the challenges of leadership. So we're going to kind of bounce around a couple different topics. Before we kind of get into our questions, want to introduce our guests. First up, I've got Amy Birks. She is the GPS brain founders call when they want to grow without the complexity. And she's uncovered hundreds of thousands of dollars in hidden revenue for small businesses. She's taken startups from to seven figures in less than a year. She's helped leaders in the Dallas Mavericks, Xerox, Wells Fargo, all level up their performance, their EQ and culture. She's also the author of The Hustle-Free Business. She's been featured in Fast Company, NBC, US News, World Report. She now leads the Simple Growth Lab, which is a group for entrepreneurs ready to simplify revenue strategy and find more clients, hopefully with a little less effort, and find some quick wins with their peers to help get their business going and build community around that. So with all that, Amy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. You make me sound so awesome.
You are awesome. That's why you're here. Next up, I've got Ilya Angote. He is a visionary founder and CEO of The Best Notary, which is a nationwide document concierge. He's redefining how estate planning gets done. And since 2010, he has empowered attorneys to delegate the last mile of their practice, everything from client signings to deed recording, so they can scale beyond the office walls and serve more families with ease. With all that, Eli, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So to our audience, welcome everyone. A couple of notes. If you're watching this on LinkedIn and you have a question or comment, go ahead and throw it in the comments there. I'll watch that as we go. I'll try to weave those in as I see them. We're also streaming on YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you want to leave a question and comment, jump over to LinkedIn. I'm not going to watch the YouTube comments here. However, if you're watching the replays on any platform, go ahead and leave comments and questions on the replay. We'll watch those in the coming days and weeks and try to respond to people there. So even if you're watching the replay, go ahead and engage there and we'll cover that. So let's kick this off. I kind of want to start actually with something that came up in some of our prep calls, which is really kind of understanding, I think, one of the biggest challenges of leadership, which is fear. And I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think it's something we all as founders and leaders are going to constantly face. And it's something we need to, I think avoiding it is not necessarily a great strategy, but you need to have a relationship with it, which is going to be healthy or allow you to move forward. So I'd love to kind of figure out, or I'd love to hear from both of you, just kind of how you context this issue of fear inside leadership, and then we can kind of talk about some of our topics. Amy, why don't we start with you? Like, what does fear mean for you? How does it show up? How is it part of leadership for you?
Oh, I love that you asked the question that way. And I love this topic. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, as we were talking about before. So I'm a study of humanity and really interested in what motivates us to take action or not, to perform in the ways that we do or not, to show up as our authentic selves or not. And my experience with this study in humanity is that we're either motivated by fear or by power. Mm-hmm. And power I define in probably a different way than most do, but as like the opposite of fear. And really power probably more love than as like the opposite of fear. And so I think that it's such an interesting thing because especially for leaders, it feels really edgy and tricky to, I think, even admit that we're afraid. Yeah. And so whether we consciously are aware of it or not, there's also that, like, are we even aware that we're operating from a place of fear? The way that we make decisions, the way that we move through the world, whether we're reactive versus responsive to things that are happening around us in our businesses, with our teams, with our clients, in the world, with our families. So I find it such a fascinating thing to like watch how things unfold, and to look at businesses and how they're operating, large and small, how the government moves, how we make decisions as a collective, and so much of the way that we move through the world as humans is because of fear.
Yeah.
We decide to invest in AI because we're afraid of falling behind, and then we fire our whole staff because we're afraid of not having the money to cover
Yeah.
the things and like whatever. And so anyways, it's a fascinating topic to me, and I see it play out in so many different ways, and I'm constantly looking at it through the lens of myself, just my own self-awareness, and watching it. I watch it especially with my kid and my interactions with her, because I think that is like the most wonderful petri dish and ecosystem to see how it might play out elsewhere. Anyway, I could talk about this forever, so I'll let you pass it over to Eli.
Yeah, Eli.
I can just keep going.
As an entrepreneur, like I'm just kind of curious. How do you think about it? How's it come up for you? Right. Like I'm assuming, I guess, at some level, like the building the business, growing the business hasn't necessarily been a cakewalk, right? I mean, there's challenges there. How has this manifested, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, great points, Amy, about how it's at the core of most of our decisions, right? We're still reptiles, right? At the core of who we are. And we forget that. There's literally a reptilian brain that inhabits, our awareness. And for me, it's been going into the fear that has been actually the most helpful tactic, is to basically take the thing that I'm resisting the most and dive right into it. Um, goes back for me to my first gig doing outside sales for Comcast. This is before I launched my company One Solo. So I think a lot of people fear sales because, right, there's this um, perspective that salespeople are doing, they're trying to extract or get one over other people, which is why, it's hard to, especially me going door to door, knocking on strangers' doors and hearing no after literally some people were yelling at me to get out of their driveways. But I think, doing this continuous work of putting myself in the path of danger being rejection, I think in some ways really numbed my relationship to fear. And I realized that it's a numbers game. The more doors I hit, the closer I got to somebody welcoming me into their home, pouring me a beverage, and telling me their life story, which led to business. It led to sometimes, really deep life insights. One gentleman gave me a Tom Robbins book, which opened up an entire path of me learning about humanity, right? And also handed me a book about geology. And that was an interesting sort of like, once again, opened up some layers in my life. So for me, entrepreneurs, I think the fear is not knowing when you're going to get to where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
A lot of uncertainty. And I talk to lawyers for a living. I help lawyers get over their fear of delegation. That's our business. One lawyer came to us and said, "Hey, my kid's doing my binders. He's 30 behind. Can you help me with this thing?" And we didn't know what to expect, or that was going to become right now a significant part of our business, which allowed us to go beyond this one-dimensional product, right, notarization, into a fully managed back office. So, this habit that I have of jumping in first and figuring things out afterwards, I think is what has helped, us add on all these different products. And right now we're spinning out literally like 3 SaaS products because we built them for ourselves. And then of course the AI hype, to your point, Amy, right? AI is all the rage. So we found a way to use it to augment what amazing humans are doing. Not because we want to replace the amazing human that we have, but because we want to use this tool to help them do better work and have less errors. So fear again is about the fear of making mistakes. A lot of my lawyers literally they spend their whole lives as what they call true solos. True solos have literally zero support from anyone in any way, shape, at all. They're doing all of their lawyering, all of their admin, all of their practice management, all on their own. It's a one-person restaurant. So I talk to some of these folks and I help them realize that, this is one of the biggest obstacles right? To you doing what you set out to do, which is to serve people, to guide them and advise them through some of like life's most difficult fears, the fear of
Hmm.
what happens when I die, what's going to happen to all
Yeah.
my stuff. Are my family members going to be, fighting and in conflict? Is there going to be litigation because my instructions weren't clear on what to do with all the things that I've left behind? So we are literally at the intersection of fear every single day, whether it's me with my team, whether it's my lawyers, at delegation, and whether it's their clients when it comes to what happens when I die.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think this is an interesting kind of starting point is I find that sort of the counterbalance to this or what allows us to work through the fear or to find, ways of kind of managing the fear or leveraging the fear is around this idea of purpose and this idea of vision. Like where are we going? And I, I find that companies that have a really well-defined, meaningful purpose actually in that there is fear, right? In that is this element of, oh my God, are we really going to do this? Or at least, I mean, like this is not going to be easy, and we're going to have to challenge ourselves, and we're probably going to have to, at a minimum, really change the way we're doing things if we're going to achieve this. Like having this kind of bigger picture, and I find one of the reasons that good kind of successful companies have articulated this is to help them overcome this, or at least balance fear or give them a tool to kind of overcome that fear. I'd be curious to kind of see like what role does purpose play in organizations that you've worked with or that you've been involved with in terms of kind of balancing or pushing through some of that, and what is the dynamic there that you've seen, Amy? I'd love to kind of hear your take on that one.
Yeah, I love that that connection because I think so much of what helps us move in life is having something bigger than ourselves. I'm
Hmm.
going in a little while to facilitate a workshop about networking authentically,
Hmm.
which seems like an oxymoron. Like, how do you even do that, right? But but the reason that it feels weird is because it is weird because there's a lot of inauthenticity, and so much of what comes from that is fear, and that all of that fear is really around the fact that as humans we are just inherently self-centered,
Yeah.
and that's not there's nothing bad about that. It just is, and that fear is part of that. Like we're constantly risk assessing and looking at the world around us for threats and trying to figure things out. Like Eli said, the reptilian brain, it just hasn't evolved yet, right? The part of our brain that helps us make decisions in business, helps us know when to cross the street safely, helps us know, if it's okay for our child to stick a fork in the uh, power outlet. Like all of that is the same part of the brain that is also used to looking for saber-toothed tigers around the corner. So it hasn't evolved yet. We equate everything basically with death,
Yeah.
and that is the ultimate unknown. And so when we've got other things that we can focus on that take us out of ourselves, so not so much focused on, I'm afraid I'm going to walk into that room and I'm going to feel weird and nobody's going to want to talk to me and I don't know what my elevator pitch is and I don't know what to say, and if I make this decision, my entire staff, everybody's counting on me to do this right. Like all of that can, like, we can lift ourselves out of that and
Uh-huh.
into a place of service, which is the ultimate hack, because when we show up in service, then we're not focused on this and like all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
nonsense. We're able to show up for something else. And so purpose, I think, is really important because it gives everybody an opportunity to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves and can take them out of that spinny, messy, like place. Even if it's just a little spinny, right? Like it's like normal. But if we can show up with a knowing every day that we've got something that we're all focused on, we're moving in that direction together, then, we get to activate that other part of us that really is also very tribal, which is we move together in community,
Yeah.
and that is the most powerful way that we as a as a humanity, I think, can be successful.
Yeah.
And we forget because we're all individually in these meat suits here walking around thinking that we're like all alone in this, and the reality is that we're not, but we forget.
Yeah, I want to come back to that one because I think there's some key aspects of community and belonging that I want to dig into. But I want to hear from Eli. Like, as you've kind of scaled the business, grown the business, expanded things, like how have you kind of used purpose and vision, like this idea of something bigger, to move through maybe, some of the anxieties or fears or kind of resistance that you felt in terms of executing?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I, in some ways, honestly, sometimes pinch myself to confirm, right, that I'm actually here, right, in Silicon Valley, building, a startup, which in some ways, right, we're both an established company. I hired my first employee in 2010. And that company is still going, right? 16 years in
Yeah.
2026, which is, I think, something that is not common, right? To be able to someone called me one time. They said, Eli, you're a cockroach kind of entrepreneur because nothing seems to get. How many
I was
companies in Silicon
just trying to
Valley?
figure how that was going to be a compliment there, but yeah, I get
Right?
where it went.
I'll never forget, right? Michael de la Maza, right? He's this kind of super duper serial entrepreneur, right? And he's like, wow, like your company's not a good fit for me to invest in, but right, you got a very special quality, which is like being able to endure.
Yeah.
So in some ways, when I'm running this marathon, which began back in Nairobi, where I was born and raised, which is why I'm like, wow, I'm here in the middle of right one of the most innovative. And someone said to me, "You're crazy for building a company in Silicon Valley because it's the most competitive place on earth." He said, "To
Yeah.
build a company." It's like I'm in Budapest, I'm in all these places, I'm in Chiang Mai, where I don't have to deal with the stress of all
Yeah.
these people competing for, as Amy was saying, limited resources, because that's just how humans roll, right?
Yeah.
Two choices, good or bad, right or wrong, and it's been a journey of honestly unpeeling, what is truly important to us. And number one is stay alive, don't die, because,
Mhm.
things are trying to kill you, right? Whether it's like, the car next to you when you're driving, or just this existential fear, which, some psychologists, call death anxiety, as part of a larger scope of work called, terror management theory, which is
Mhm.
the theory that we are constantly making decisions from a place of, is this leading me closer to death or closer towards life?
Mhm.
And even sometimes towards immortality, which is the legacy we leave behind when we die.
Mhm.
So essentially, reading a book by Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death, which says all of our culture, all the things we spend time on, the art, the movies, the shows, all of it in some ways is a way to buffer, right? Our knowledge from a very young age. We realize that, oh my God, I mean, these animals are dying.
Yeah.
We also are gonna go that same way. And that creates this like serious dissonance. Like, why do anything when we know we can die and we don't know when we're gonna die?
Mhm.
So, especially in these current days and times, things are kind of crazy. We have to find a way to ground in something bigger than ourselves. So, for me, just being able to represent Kenya and represent my ancestors as someone who has, overcome. People before me overcame a ton of obstacles,
Yeah.
right? To be able to thrive in a place where the system is trying to limit what you can do to control you, and in many ways to kill you.
Mhm.
So I think I carry a lot of sort of I'm holding a lot of weight of expectations, of putting not just Kenya on the map, right, but those who did not come from means, those who did not have the wherewithal, knowledge wise, financially, network wise, to be able to go the distance in the world of entrepreneurship, to take on the system and actually create lasting change. So for me, taking on estate planning, somebody said to me, and this is a woman who's building a network for Black attorneys, because it's hard,
Mhm.
they're all kind of spread out. She's like, she's a lawyer. She's like, why are you doing this, Eli? When I told her what we do, which is like bringing the estate planning attorney's office into people's homes,
Yeah.
digitally and in person, she's like, why did you decide to do this? Because she understands how difficult it is
Yeah.
to bring change into the world of estate planning. So for me, that legacy piece is what keeps me going, and what I try to remind these attorneys I'm talking to: let's zoom out beyond you being afraid of something going wrong, and you being embarrassed, in front of your clients. And let's think about how many more families you could serve and how much more philanthropic work you could do now that you're not stuck behind the desk, becoming a very highly paid admin assistant in many
Yeah.
levels. So essentially, yeah, let's, it's zooming out and realizing that, right, we don't know when we're not going to be here. So let's build those systems. That's what I sell this to my team. We're doing the documentation. It's really hard work, right? To document our process. Amy and I met at a time when I was like one of the biggest crises in our company. It's like we cannot, do things ad hoc. We have to build systems. So I tell my team, this is, essentially just like an estate plan, the way people spend all that money and that time to create these documents that allow them to pass their wealth, their capital, their knowledge to the next generation. This is what we're doing for our company. We're making sure
Yeah.
that we have all the knowledge nicely buttoned up so we can then pass this to the next generation of team members who will come and help us really iterate on this vision of helping more families secure their wealth assets and have peace of mind.
Yeah. Amy, I'd love to kind of go back or connect this a little bit to something you said earlier. And maybe we've got two threads here. One is sort of the idea of seeing yourself as part of a larger continuum, right? That you are the there's people before you, there's legacy before you, there's legacy after you, and how do you both leverage and honor what happened before, but also how do you kind of drive, shape, hand over kind of this legacy going forward, right? Like how do you become a steward of the process? The other one is kind of the connection that you have with other people as part of this. Um, how, I guess, where do you see the kind of benefits or the opportunities as a leader to kind of connect with both of those in terms of strengthening your position, giving you motivation, kind of this higher sense, that may help you move through some of the kind of more immediate challenges or kind of the personal kind of fear-based uncertainty and challenges that you face as leaders?
Yeah, such a great question. And I just want to also add that Eli, by the way, happens to be an amazing leader of teams and also doing what we're talking about like bringing a team together around a collective mission. So I just want to, you didn't mention that, Eli, and I just wanted to make sure to call that out because you're so good at that. His team is they're so bought in. So I think that there's, there's lots of different pieces that we could talk about here. I think that part of where maybe we'll talk about where we get hung up a little bit and then lead us to where we can do better. But I think we get hung up in a couple different places. One is that just in our, like, this is like emotional intelligence kind of one-on-one stuff, right? We are in our human interactions and how we relate to one another often, we see everybody through our lens, like our experience of them is just ours. And so anytime we're in resistance or like wishing somebody was different or, even whether it's our kids, our partner, our team members, our, whatever, the person at the grocery store, the jerk that just cut you off in traffic, whatever. All of that is through the lens of our perspective. And so when we can get to a place where we can, number one, know that that's true, right? That every experience we're having with somebody else is ours and ours alone, no matter how their behavior may be. And then number two, when we can also be in a place where we can accept others as they are, then everything gets easier. Right. So like me and the friction that I've had with my mother since I was, 7 years old, and like felt brave enough to talk back and she's amazing. Right. My mother is a wonderful human being, but I can't like have that experience of her unless I choose to, unless I decide that her idiosyncrasies and, and whatever are just okay. Like it's just okay for everybody to just simply be who they are. And so I think that has led us to this place where we are as a country, certainly, right, in the United States, and has spread throughout the world where we have no tolerance. Like we have no tolerance for other people simply being who they are. I run into this with my 10-year-old, right? Like I just want her to clean her room. Just do it. Just put your backpack on and go out the door. Come on, let's go, right? But that's all mine. So I think that's one piece of it that is really useful to be aware of, is that when we can be in a place of acceptance of what is, and not like in an, it is what it is sort of way, but like a genuine, it's a powerful place to be. Of like, this just simply is. And it is not a good use of my energy resources to try to change it or force it to be different. Then that allows us to be more powerful and to show up more powerfully from a place of purpose. And so then the other thing that I think is really interesting is how much we resist intimacy, in connection. And that's not like not just in a romantic sense, but in the sense of,
Yeah.
human to human in general. And that there's something very, very, very vulnerable and very, very scary from a reptilian sense about allowing ourselves to be intimate with others. And so in business, we have been very clear that intimacy is not okay. We don't
Mhm.
do that. We separate business and personal. You
Yeah.
do your personal stuff on your time. We don't need to, we don't cross those boundaries. That is very, very clear. And again, I'm not even talking about like romantic or anything like that. Just like genuinely,
Yeah. Real
I
life.
remember my
Yeah.
first business coach told me that I couldn't be friends with my clients. And I was like, it was like the record scratch, like, I was like, wait, what? I don't understand. It like did not
And why,
compute.
why did that run afoul
Because
for
there
you?
was some boundary that would then cross to make it muddy or messy with money or things like that. And the reality is it's not true, because if we can allow ourselves to be more intimate and to have relationships where we actually care about others, where we bring empathy to the table, where we're not performative, where we're allowed to be ourselves, where they're allowed to be themselves, then we can actually have, any sort of transparent conversation that might need to happen, and not have to worry that it's going to go badly if somebody's payment is declined, or
Yeah.
whatever the things are, right? If somebody's not showing up to work on time and we got to manage that, like if we have a relationship where trust is available because we have prioritized intimacy, then everything actually does get easier, because we're not showing up afraid. When we
Yeah.
allow intimacy to be available, fear is not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but that
I think this idea of acceptance, certainly, whoops, we lost her. Now I wanted to answer or something. Actually, let me come back to you, Eli, because I think
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to kind of see how you've dealt with, like, so when Amy was talking about the need to kind of accept people for who they are and where they are and not trying to change them, like, I get that, but I also find that leadership has this element of, hold on, we're gonna get her back in. Oh, oh, there we go. Oh no. We'll get her. Don't worry. I find that this leadership does have an element of inviting people to change, or inviting people to kind of think differently or behave differently or show up differently. And I want to sort of see, there she is. She's back. I've got a
you're
question to
emphatic.
Eli. So as a leader, how do you both kind of embrace where people are and who people are and where they are, but also invite them to change or invite them to into something new, say? Like, how do you
Mhm.
kind of balance that as a leader, or what's your experience in kind of working with people around that?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things to do, I think, is to really meet everyone where they are. Going back to what Amy said about whatever is coming up is your own experience.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate to have worked pretty deeply in a modality called nonviolent communication, right?
Ooh,
And NVC, right?
NDC. Yeah.
NVC, right? So we're getting into like, how do I say this to you in a way that is coming from my experience, which no one
Uh-huh.
can really challenge, right?
Uh-huh.
And then how can I make a request, right? A request that is a pure request, not a demand,
Yeah.
which is, if you don't do this, there's going to be some consequences, right? Which is
Uh-huh.
sadly what happens when we get triggered, right? When one of my team members, drops the ball, I'm hearing that sometimes it's hard for the team to come forth with issues because of this kind of blame culture. This has
Yeah.
come up multiple times. I'm very glad that I've created a culture where people can kind of voice kind of what
Hmm.
what they're feeling as team members, right? And this blame culture, I'm hearing is what it really kind of like reduces the time to break the glass. We've got a channel in Slack called Break the Glass, right, where something is amiss. We kind of notify everyone so we're all aware of what's happening, who owns it, who's going to get it resolved. So I think making what NBC calls a hungry duck request is a request that is akin to you handing a piece of bread, right, at the park to some ducks, right?
Hmm.
They might eat the piece of bread. They may not eat the piece of bread.
Hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter. You're offering this with a clean and kind of clear, no strings attached type of situation, right? So I think that's the hardest thing to do as leaders is to be that vulnerable that this ask I'm making to someone, they might say no.
Yeah.
If they're truly empowered and know that there is no catch to it. So kind of overcoming this kind of power dynamic, this power imbalance, that, affects a lot of kind of work and business relationships. Like Amy said, right? Her coach was like, don't be friends with the client because it's going to put you maybe on the same kind of playing ground. And then you're going to, discount your fees, or, you're not going to be in this position of power of,
Yeah.
dispassionate. So I think for me, it's been a lot of humility,
Yeah.
and really realizing that, I'm as human as my team members are.
Yeah.
And they have many strengths that I do not. When it comes to like, sitting down with a task that is not interesting or stimulating, I am the worst person for that task. And thanks to Amy and one of her coaching groups of kind of for entrepreneurs, I finally got to read a book that has been coming up like in the last 5, 6 years, maybe 7, 8 times. And this book is Who Not How.
Okay.
Dan Sullivan and Dr.
Yep.
Benjamin Hardy. So, this book talked about the wisdom of procrastination, right? You are essentially not doing this thing because it doesn't stimulate you. But guess what? There's a who out there, right? My amazing team of 10 people that I work with who can own a lot of these hows that
Yeah.
I fail at. Even the things I used to love, like video editing, it's becoming a problem because, I just really, I've got the vision. I know what I want to appear on the other side, right? And sitting in that video editor, making it happen myself is a terrible use of the company's time and
Yeah.
resources. So I think me sort of giving up control, once again, getting over the fear that, there might be a typo, in that video title. There might be an email that goes out and maybe doesn't say exactly what it should say. Overcoming that fear of a mistake will happen, a client will be upset, right? The delivery team will, fumble, and a client's going to be upset. Overcoming that fear of, okay, I'm going to have this really, really tough conversation with the client to say,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? The binder got lost. It's happened once, by the way. In the last 4 years, we've lost one binder, and FedEx lost it. And we had the activity log to prove it. My team member delivered 5 binders to FedEx, right? And there was a receipt for that, but then one never got to the destination.
Yeah.
So the worst things will happen. By the way, FedEx, I feel like they had like 200 trucks go up in flames. So, we think that we're having a bad day.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
right? Imagine when you're scaling this, they literally,
But empathy.
Yeah.
entire FedEx truck. So,
It's life.
it's the nature of doing hard things. There
Yeah.
are going to be problems, but how we react and deal with those problems is really what defines who we become and maybe how far our vision can go. The more
Yeah.
tolerance you have for these uncomfortable conversations within your company, with your clients, with their clients, right? We had a client who recently wanted to see, our SOC2 certification
Yeah.
and got deep into the weeds to the point that, wow, like, we're not quite, a really large company, but here's what we're doing to make sure your data is safe and secure.
Yeah.
So, for us, we welcome that as a moment to like, okay, let's get you what, you need from all these vendors that we use because they have those certifications. We don't yet, right? But also like, it's okay that you ask these questions.
Yeah.
We're gonna show you what we can
We'll
do.
figure
As
it out.
opposed to, ooh, let's not talk about this. Let's find a way to not deal with this. So going into it openly, saying, hey, we don't have this assurance that you're looking for, but here's what we can do instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're gonna hit time here. We could go on probably for another couple hours on many of these topics. So, but I want to make sure people have contact information. Eli, if people want to get a hold of you, learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way to get that?
Yeah, so our website is thebestnotary.net. Not the .com. I'm working on reclaiming that. I'm on LinkedIn, Eli Angote. You can find me on there. I love to share what we're working on, and very happy to work with anyone, in the estate planning world and beyond when it comes to notarization in general.
Awesome. And Amy, what's the best way to get a hold of you, find out what you're doing?
Yeah, my website is amybirks.com, amybirks.com, and that's a great place to find me. And then I have, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't post very often, but there's a lot of stuff there from the past, and occasionally I pop on. Same Amy Birks, and I think my LinkedIn thing says
Your URL.
Strategy Ninja. My URL
Okay.
says Strategy Ninja, and it's
All right.
might be that way too. Bruce, thank you so much for inviting this conversation. I really love again, talking about all this stuff.
No, thank you for sharing. And thank you to all of our audience who joined us here today. Again, if you're on the replay, go ahead and leave comments and questions. We'll watch that. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, just bruce@eckfeldt.com is my email, eckfeldt.com URL, and obviously on LinkedIn. We're all there, pretty active, so feel free to message. And thank you everyone for joining. And thank you again to our guests, Eli and Amy. It was been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Amy, for making this happen. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Eli.
Have a great day.